Hi everyone, it's Sonia McDonald from Leadership HQ, and as you know, we are so passionate about building and creating and also showcasing kind, courageous and inclusive leaders. And today I am live streaming with the incredible Oleg Vornik, who is the CEO of DroneShield. And ever since I have spoken to him, he has been so incredibly authentic and wonderful to speak to. And I know he's really passionate about the work they do at DroneShield and also around leadership. So welcome to the live stream today.
Thanks for having me, Sonia.
My pleasure. So tell me, and I know you've kind of come up through the ranks. You were the CFO at DroneShield and then you became the CEO. And it's definitely a different kind of, you're wearing kind of different hats when you go from a CFO to a CEO. Tell me a little bit about your journey and that transition.
Sure. Thanks for asking. Good question. So when I first came on board, my first task was to take the company through the IPO. This was in mid-2016, which we've done. And after that, it was more or less business as usual, or as usual as it comes for a young scale-up company. There are different types of CFOs, and naturally you gravitate to what you're strong with. So there are types, which I certainly wasn't one of, who are, I guess you can say, strong with accounting and like the internal processes and those kind of things. And I was hating every second of it. So thankfully now I have a CFO who's an ex-auditor who is really good at all those things. But what naturally attracted me was more the front end, so the sales and the operational side of the business. So when an opportunity to step up to be the CEO happened, I was quite glad to take it because that was more or less an extension of what I was already doing at the time, and I kind of never looked back.
So how long? So you've been now in the CEO role for over 3 years, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So tell me a little bit about DroneShield. I know we did speak on the phone about it, but you tell us a little bit about, for everyone that's listening, tell us a little bit about DroneShield.
It's quite an interesting sector which a lot of people don't know much about. So as drones, and we're not talking big drone size of airplanes kind of flying high in the sky, but more little guys like DJI Mavic, which people can buy from places like JB Hi-Fi for $1,000 and then fly them around. And there's great amount of positive uses of those drones, like taking footage and inspecting pipelines and so forth. And it's a great technology. But with all the positive uses of technology come the nefarious uses, which is where we come in. So we're seeing ISIS and other terrorist organizations weaponizing those drones and using them as asymmetric warfare. So you basically have your own air force if you happen to be one of those terrorist organizations that cost you next to nothing but is quite deadly. Then there are a number of other applications. We're seeing, for example, criminals using drones to deliver payloads like drugs, weapons, cigarettes, escape kits, cell phones, etc., into prisons. People using drones, sometimes not necessarily with ill intent, but still quite negative consequences around airports. And when an airport realizes there's a drone in the vicinity, they have to shut down all traffic because the consequences of an airplane engine hovering a drone into it. So you imagine a metal object with lithium-ion batteries in it can be quite lethal. So it's an enormous danger and inconvenience for airports. And then a whole lot of other situations where drones present a threat to safety, security, or privacy. So DroneShield has developed solutions that serve mostly government and critical infrastructure customers to detect and also, where legal, defeat such threats. So we started business just about 5 years ago, and drones were not much of a threat there. But as the technology developed, drone technology developed, we had the vision that as drones were going to get better, all the negative uses of drones were going to be right there as well. So we started working on the various technologies. First came acoustics. So if you ever hear a drone, that's probably the first way you're going to know it's coming. There's that buzzing noise, which is what we focused on. And then we moved on from there. So today we offer a range of solutions for detection, ranging from radio frequencies to radar, cameras, and underpinning all that, very sophisticated software, including artificial intelligence and machine learning. And then on the defeat front, we don't use kinetic solutions in the industry lingo. So we don't do bullets or nets or lasers for a number of reasons, including quite high collateral damage. So if you have a drone at a stadium carrying a dangerous payload, you certainly don't want to start shooting bullets at it if you think of all the people there. But rather we use what's called electronic warfare, or jamming in more simple language, which effectively safely disables a drone and either lands it on the ground or sends it back where it came from.
That's incredible. Okay, so in terms of like a most amazing technology, I mean, in terms of like DroneShield and what's happening around the world at the moment, I mean, have you encountered as a company, in terms of what you do, any challenges around what's going on around the world with what you actually are providing as an incredible technology to the world around drones? Yeah.
Not to sound like a James Bond movie, but the world is certainly becoming a more dangerous and unstable place, and we are seeing all of that. So drones are cheap, easily accessible technology, which can be used for negative applications very easily. So we are in approximately 100 countries around the world, and everywhere we're seeing those themes that a lot of government agencies are turning to us to help them with. So as we see all the things escalate, being drone attacks on Aramco in Saudi, to various organizations, terrorist organizations deploying drones, to, I think there was a recently reported article in the Long Bay prison here in Sydney with riots there, which reportedly started through drone deliveries, and a lot of other applications. All that is continuing to rise. And of course, as the drone technology improves, that just kind of adds the flame to it.
So therefore, again, you obviously need to be keeping abreast around the technology needed to be able to stop a lot of these kind of, I didn't realize there was just such an impact around how drones can really impact from a negative aspect, communities in our world. I mean, I wasn't even aware of all this.
It's a classic example of a new technology with bad guys being very fast to take advantage of something that's been initially developed for positive use and still is like positive use, but adapting it for their own means. So a lot of our work in the early years was actually creating awareness of the threat. So making sure that people understand that this is something that is happening. For military customers, you didn't need much convincing because you have literally people dying in a battlefield from drones throwing grenades. So they were on board with that kind of thing from day one. Other customers took a bit more time, and what we're now seeing is in a lot of situations we would put our detection sensors into a facility, and when a customer may think they're getting maybe one drone flight over their facility a week, and in fact they're getting 30 drone flights a week, that quickly convinces them as to the severity of the issue.
Well, I'm getting a lot of comments on LinkedIn. A lot of people are saying, this is amazing, such an interesting concept. This is the future. Modern peacekeeping is another comment that's coming in. I think it's really good that we're actually gaining awareness of this, around that there are organisations that, again, building and also have technology that can keep us safe. I mean, so many of us wouldn't even know the threats that these drones can actually, and the impact they can have on us. So as you know, when I approached you, and I approached you because I knew that you were one of AFR's fastest growing companies. Mm-hmm. You know that I'm so passionate, and we did have a talk about leadership. You know that I'm really passionate about leadership, and obviously leadership is playing a big role in the work that you're doing at DroneShield. So tell me about leadership. Like, what does leadership mean to you? Like, why is leadership important to you?
We're quite a flat company. We're a small business, so there are about 25 people in our team. Leadership, I guess if you look at it from the positive perspective, and I think there are different ways of looking at it, it's encouraging everybody to work towards same goal and I guess to a particular vision. And over time, you kind of build up that vision and you try to share it with people and you kind of work towards that. It's not always a static thing, so especially in a fast-moving sector like ours. So you kind of pivot over time while still remaining in the same core theme towards what your end users want you to do, and you kind of continuing to drive things forward and motivate people. In my experience, while you have to, of course, pay people what they're worth, money is not the main for most guys. So I'm sure that most of our employees could get very highly paid jobs in many other places, but it's providing that challenging environment to work. Like, for example, we have no issue attracting really talented engineers because, especially in Australia, which tends to be a smaller marketplace for these kind of defense technologies compared to, say, US or UK, it's a very rare opportunity to work on what is a cutting-edge space by global standards. And who wouldn't want to be taking down drones, right? So it's providing that kind of exciting environment for people to be in, and at the same time, quickly developing solutions that your customers want.
It is very exciting. I mean, to be part of something where you're actually keeping people safe. Ultimately, like you're saving people's lives. It's a really wonderful purpose to be part of a growing company that is, again, modern, using technology to, not trying to, as you said, the James Bond theme around saving the planet or saving the world. It's you're contributing to our safety. And I'm sure there's millions and millions of people out there that weren't even aware of what you're doing and your technology. So what's next for you? Like, what's next for you and the company? Where are you taking it?
Well, we have a pretty long list in terms of the roadmap of the products that we want to roll out. The good stage in terms of where we're now is our customers have a trusted relationship with us. So while in the beginning we sort of sat around and thought, okay, well, what would a customer want? Now all of our product development happens in response to what the customer is saying. Well, this is great, but have you thought about this or that? So it's just continuing to develop those cutting edge solutions, continuing to build trusted relationships with our customers. Interesting thing about being basically a defense company is it's a very different dynamic to, say, being a consumer company where you sell stuff to individuals over the internet, where the lead times and the relationships are not as numerous. So the idea is that you build trusted relationships with a handful of customers. But those customers are very sticky. Once they trust you, they will be in the journey with you to continue kind of ramping with you, so getting through larger orders, improved technologies, and so forth. So we have a very good relationship with the Australian Defence Department, for example. We delivered a couple of things to the US government agencies, same for UK and a number of others. So continuing to reinforce those relationships is a big thing for us. Being publicly listed is a great place to be. So we've now been listed for about 4 years, where that kind of allows small retail shareholders to be part of your journey as well. So we're excited for that too. So as the company grows, for them to grow with us. So there are kind of a number of facets to this.
And are you finding that during this time, has there been any particular, I mean, you've talked about trust, and the thing that I'm hearing a lot at the moment with a lot of people I'm talking to, particularly during this time, is I believe that kind of trust and integrity is the centre pole of leadership. Trust is everything. If you don't have trust with your team, with your people, with your clients, with your customers, there's no trust. If there's no team, there's no relationship. Trust is fundamental. So in terms of, as a leader, and I want to talk to you about challenges in a second, but I kind of really love the fact you're talking about trust. How do you find, in terms of you being successful and growing, that obviously trust is the center pole for you? How do you go about that? Like, how have you found that why trust? How are you building that trust?
Well, I think there are two ways to run things. So trust is one, and I guess doing things transactionally would be another, where you try to maximize your gains in the short term. I guess the nature of our business is that it's a very long-term kind of business where you grow things gradually, and you just continue to ramp up your technology, your team, your sales, and so forth. So it would make absolutely no sense to try to cut corners. When you deliver a product to customers, a small example, you can always try to save money here or there, and you still deliver under the contract specifications, but it may not be perhaps the very best offering you can do. But that's not the path we take. We always try to give our very best in every situation, every demo, every order, and the customers appreciate that. And I guess also in a senior role, what you do sends an example to everybody else in the team, where you are in a way a chief culture officer, so people try to sort of copy what you do. I mean, they have their own moral compass, of course, but basically they subconsciously replicate what you behave like. So all of that comes into play.
Yeah, it is true. I think around that leading by example, I think is really important, and that they're looking at your values, your actions, your behaviors. And I think that at the moment it is everyone they want to feel psychologically safe, like you talk about keeping people safe, and saving lives, but also people need to feel safe, and building trust and being transparent, I think, is really key, especially during this time. But in terms of have you found as a company you've had any challenges, or is there anything that's been keeping you awake? I think the reason why I ask is I'm sure lots of us during COVID and during what's kind of happened, this kind of, I don't know, everyone's saying unprecedented times are happening. And look, I definitely didn't anticipate in my lifetime seeing something like this. And so, as leaders, how to overcome this. But how have you found it? I think it's good for us to share some of our challenges sometimes as leaders to help others.
Mm-hmm. I think being in a scale up, you naturally probably have higher risk tolerance than most people who potentially would be in larger, more established companies. Although I do often make a point to people who work for larger companies that while companies themselves are safe, or the jobs within those companies are certainly not safer than within smaller companies. Being in the defense government space, we're fortunate in that we're not as affected as, of course we're affected, but not as affected as perhaps in the hospitality and other industries, where our supply chain has been designed to be resilient. We sure didn't envisage a virus, but we did build our supply and manufacturing processes in a way that we're not easily affected, and that saw us pretty well through the whole process. And the way, again, our operations are designed, and again, wasn't supposed to be in response to a virus, but more of a general business contingency. We were set up so that we can continue to run the business without too much effect. So the biggest impact, I would say, is through the fact that back on the trust thing, that a lot of those kind of face-to-face discussions and demos could not happen. So despite us living in a world of digital communications, much like we're having this conversation now, people still feel the need to meet and spend time with you in person to really kind of develop trust and kind of pick on your personal cues, I guess, which don't really come across in conversations like this as much. So I, in the last 4 odd years that I've been with the business, would spend anywhere between 3 and 6 months a year on the road meeting with our customers, and all of that came to an abrupt stop. So that certainly did delay things, but you just try to make the most of it. And I won't deny it, working from home is highly efficient. There's no travel time, no commute time. I mean, even with the gym, you exercise at home, so that's again time saving.
Oh, gee, you're good. You've obviously set up some good habits there. I think a lot of people went, the gym's not open, I'm not going to the gym. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
So it sounds like you've set up some good routines. I mean, how are you going to go with the kind of, now people are starting to go back into the office? So as a company, are you still going to be kind of doing the working from, you're going to have a bit of both, or are you all going back into the office? How are you going to be navigating that?
We're sort of taking it as it comes. So we have a hybrid arrangement now where we have a manufacturing facility, and that is continuing to go full speed as it has. And we are an essential service business in that way, being a defense company. In terms of our small US operations, US actually hasn't been as closed down. So when Virginia, as say, most of Australia has been, or other places in the US. So that is continuing, and the guys there are not as much traveling, but they are running with demos and whatnot. In terms of our kind of main office in Sydney, we're taking a hybrid approach where effectively people who want to work from the office work from the office, and the rest work from home. And again, back on the trust issue that you're saying, you trust a person to deliver as much being in the office as being at home. So whatever works best for them.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think it's about outcomes and outputs. You don't need to be seeing someone 9 to 5. And you tend to find when you trust someone and give them that flexibility, they tend to do more for you anyway. So especially if you've got a really good culture and a good leadership and you know exactly your purpose and things, I think that, and you're motivating them. And I think as well, obviously now we're spending, and I get it, you do tend to find that you build more trusted relationships when you're meeting with someone or meeting them face to face. So again, it's just keeping that trust happening, is just making sure you're communicating more with them. So you talked about, obviously, we're all working from home a little bit more, but in terms of you as a CEO of a company, and I know what it's like sitting in your shoes, the pressures and making sure like you're delivering in terms of outputs and outcomes, and there's so much to a CEO role. You wear all these different hats. You have to take care of strategy and financials and people and culture and things. I mean, how do you take care of yourself? I mean, and how do you, in terms of being a great leader, what do you do for yourself to maintain your learning, your well-being?
I think the first step is to compartmentalize, where you focus on a particular issue at a time and don't let the burden of everything else kind of crush your thinking. And I mean, maybe it's a sign of my OCD, but I almost try to separate my working hours into 15-second chunks where I try to kind of deal with an immediate thing at the time, and I give it kind of my full presence, my full focus, and then you move on to the next issue. I don't really separate between the work and personal. I think for some jobs it's great. For mine, it doesn't really work. Where most of the time, in the evenings is when it's morning in Europe. So, a lot of my calls happen in the evenings, for example. Mornings is usually time for the calls with the US, and evenings for Europe. And if anything, quite a time is probably in the middle of the day, like now. But they still are.
Time for me. Sorry.
No, all good. So you I mean, that said, though, some of the best ideas come when you're doing something entirely different. In fact, I was reading, try not to get a visual, but I was reading about Warren Buffett getting an idea about buying this particular bank while he was taking a bath. And I can really relate to this, where your mind might be switched off, but then, actively, but then your subconscious comes up with an idea. So every once in a while, it's good to switch off, but generally, I don't have a hard separation between work or not work.
Yeah, and again, my best ideas happen. Everyone don't shower. Like if I'm in, I think when you're kind of like just relaxed, and that's why there's real power in being bored, not being doing all the time. So in terms of, I know I don't have a lot more time with you because I know that you have to jump off soon. For future CEOs, so people that are watching this or listening to this, what advice would you give to someone, especially maybe in a startup, someone that, you know, and I get it, like your startups and people that are trying to grow their businesses or companies, can I tell you, you work so hard, and you're so, like, it's like another child, you know, it's something that you're really super passionate about because you want to see it grow. What advice would you give to someone that is a CEO of a startup or wants to be a CEO of a startup?
Well, where do you begin? Plenty. So a lot of it is just doing, right? So unlike being a lawyer or a doctor, you can't really train for it. It's a analogy I gave to somebody who came to work for me a while ago is, you know, they came from more of kind of corporate strategy background. Is I said, you're a great boxer, but I'm about to put you into a street fight. So the work naturally finds a way to find your weak spots and then hammer those weak spots until they're no longer weak spots. So, you know, for example, when I started, my strong points were more kind of analytical and maybe strategy, and I was terrible with interpersonal skills. And I guess one thing about the role is you just have to continue to deal with people until this is no longer your weak point. So it's a bit like that. So you just continue to plug away at it, and you grow round it off as you go. A lot of it still is about connections. So the way I came across this role was I was in investment banking. I was really overstaying my welcome. I wasn't loving what I was doing, even though for the right person it was probably really interesting work. And I had a call from a fund which took a stake in the company, and they were saying, you know, would you be interested to be introduced, you know, to the board to be the CFO? So a lot of it is pretty random connections. So being open to that cubic centimeter of chance that pops in front of your face here and there, and it's really interesting. Sometimes you kind of think how much your life changes by really random occurrences where you just sort of grab it, you know, grab the chance as it happens. A lot of it is kind of being in the right phase in your life. So, you know, different people have different priorities. It's a terrible thing to say, but I don't have a family, and I don't think I could have a family and do what I did at the same time. There's just not enough hours in the day. So you decide what you want to do and what kind of makes you more excited for this stage of your life. So it's kind of like, what sacrifice are you prepared to make, and, you know, are you prepared to make enough sacrifice? So these are kind of some of the advice, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear about the courage, so I think it's around having that courage to kind of have that growth mindset and go, okay, maybe I need to learn skills in this area, and for me to actually grow and step into the next role, I need to learn, as you said, interpersonal skills. Because again, as you said, like a boxer, and they have to be, jump in to be a street fighter. I see that a lot, like technically brilliant people that are like, okay, we want to put you into the street fight, but we actually need to kind of prepare you for the street fight. And sometimes you just have to do it. You have to just get in there. But obviously you want to prepare them with some sort of like development or growth before you throw them or put them in the deep end, so to speak, because you want to make sure they are able to swim. But it takes a lot of courage to actually go, you know what, I need to learn these skills to be the best I can be. And also, you know, as you like, I read this once around, I think networking is so key. Like in LinkedIn, like obviously I'm live streaming this on LinkedIn, such a great way to network. Don't be afraid to that kind of, 6 degrees of separation. They say now that they say that you're the sum of 5 people. You're actually the sum of lots of different people now. And don't be afraid to say yes to opportunities as well. I think it's really important. But I think there was a book I read recently, and I forgot the name of it, but she says that, people tend to say they can have it all, but you can have it all, but sometimes not all at once. So therefore you do need to think about, what do I need to, like at the moment, I've said to, you know, especially during this time, I'm a full-time solo mum, is that my priority is my daughter, my company and my well-being all equally. Like my daughter obviously is very important to me, but they're the things that I have to focus on. Like if you kind of stretch yourself too thin, as a CEO, you've got to be the best that you can be. So that sometimes you have to go, I have to say no to things, or that isn't just right in my life at the moment because I've got to focus on this. Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah. I think the points you mentioned are really pivotal in terms of advice. So are you reading, and just before you go, are you reading anything interesting that you could recommend, or any books that you could recommend to people that are listening to this live stream around leadership, or anything to do with something that's really made a difference in your life?
Look, there are plenty of great books out there, and I try to read as much as I can. In fact, that's kind of how I normally wind down for bed. A great book I read, so there is an author, or a private equity person, shall I say, first and foremost, called Ben Horowitz. If you ever heard of Andreessen Horowitz as the private equity company. And he was a CEO initially of this company called LoudCloud, and then he became a private equity investor and made a big name of himself in the Silicon Valley. And he wrote this book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is basically his journey of becoming as he did. And I found an incredibly interesting read, and I would recommend it to anybody kind of looking into that startup space.
Okay, I think I've got that book. Okay, I'm going to go and if you do like anything to do with Warren Buffett, there's a book I can recommend to you called The Art of the Good Life. And the author, I'll send you a link to it. And I'm also going to send you my book, Leadership Attitude, just to say thank you so much for being on this amazing live stream. Before we go, is there any other insights, anything else that you would love to share to anyone? Because there's quite a few people I've seen commenting on this live stream, which is really, really great. Like someone's just gone, take action, surround yourself with the best people, trust them. So there's a lot of people interacting and really resonating with what you're saying. Is there anything you'd like to say before we close off?
Look, not really. I don't think there is ever lack of strategy or opinions. You know, I believe most of the kind of the hard part of it is execution, right? So I think most people have no issues intuitively sensing what's the right thing to do. It's just executing on their plan, and that's what I would kind of recommend people to focus on. Just be good at executing your vision. And
just do it and believe in yourself as well. So, and don't be afraid to ask for help, and surround yourself with great people that can also help you execute your vision as well. It sounds like you've got a really great group of amazing leaders and people around you as well. Yeah, so it was such an honor talking with you today. I know that lots of people got out of the live stream and hearing your insights, and we can't wait to see you go from strength to strength. And if we can do anything to help you here from Leadership HQ, or anyone that's listening to Oleg today, please reach out to him. He's incredibly approachable. They're doing some wonderful things in the defence space to keep us safe. So I just want to say thank you from all of us for your wonderful, wonderful work. And as I said, we can't wait to see you grow and go from strength to strength. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And also stay courageous and stay kind. So thanks again. Thank you. Thank you.